So I believe we can start. And I'm happy to announce today that we are running the first webinar of our series to explore the buying journey of the customers in the IT service world. And today with me is Tancho Markovic. Tancho, you are a person that comes with almost 20 years of experience. You have been working in the last 10 years as a technical manager. I believe you started as engineering manager, then you moved to head of development, then you moved to CTO position, and you also have been working in medium and enterprise companies and also startups where you used to be the CTO and you're currently CTO of one of the startups. You have seen the journey, the buying journey from multiple places. And to mention that you also have been working in the service industry before, so you have seen the both sides. And also in the last 10 plus years, you're working in almost all of your projects with external partners. So I cannot think about better person to be in this call. So without further ado, please welcome Tancho. It's a pleasure to have you in the call.
Hi. Hi to everyone, and thank you for having me on this webinar today. In the last probably 4 companies which I worked with, we had external partners. I'd be happy to explore the journey from making the choice to use external companies to the point where we have engineers working on the team.
Just for our audience, we will touch a little bit briefly about the thought process, when to start with the external partner, how this complete thinking process goes in one company, and then what is the, I will say, selection process. When do you select the company? What are the key ingredients that you would like to have in your partner? Before we go there, just to introduce myself, my name is Dimitar. I'm CEO and founder of Intertech service company working in the IT space or almost for 10 years. And it's also one of my pleasures to have been working directly with Tancho. So I believe we can share some common experiences throughout our conversation. So let's start first with the most, I will say, beginning of the thought process. So the moment that you you are thinking to start working with external partner, how this process goes for you? What are some of the things that comes to your mind? What are the things that you speak with your management and so on?
So when choosing to work with, the primary need is to find an external developer. There are many reasons as to why companies go in that direction. Regardless of what the choice is, the first part of the process is you have to find them. And the idea is that people go with external teams. Let's say if it's a team of 5 people, you need to find 5 engineers. In some cases, companies go with in the direction of freelance, which from the company's perspective is more or less the same thing. But the reason why a partner is required and most commonly involved is because you want to avoid the hassle of making an outreach, finding external developers in the country or in an ecosystem that you're not aware of, avoiding all the hassle of reaching out, conducting interviews, screening candidates, doing the hiring process fully with them, because as an external to the company, they would have to go some level of screening. So one first benefit is that you would have a partner company on the other side that will actually do all of this for you. Uh, the other aspect is the whole process of management of personnel. In the sense, when you do have an external a freelancer or an external contractor, you have to guide them through a career path, through personal development and such. If this is done by a partner, the company's lives is much easier. As you mentioned, I worked with both startups and enterprise companies. Especially in the startup space, this is super critical. It relieves the amount of administrative work you need to do as a company. You have a single service contract with a customer, with a partner company that handles this whole process for you, and then you just manage to shorten the time from reach out to having, as we say, butt in seat, where a person is able to start their own building process and actually start being productive.
Yeah.
In the enterprise space, it's a little bit different because they have dedicated HR departments, but over there's a whole different set of constraints that companies have. I've primarily worked in fintech and healthcare, healthcare technologies. In both cases, there's a lot of regulatory requirements, which every company and different technology branches have different requirements. So as you can imagine, in the fintech space, you need to have certain security certification, regulatory checks for if you do transaction processing, etc. So you have at least, let's say, SOC 2 or other standards which fall under this category. And then in the healthcare space, there's obviously other regulatory requirements which the partners, the company can actually meet ahead of time, which will be a huge relief in terms of onboarding new people.
Yeah. So I think you mentioned a lot of important things, but I will take you a step back,
Yes.
and we will take those kind of like top 10 things to evaluate when you are picking your partner for a little bit later. And I will take you back. We as a company in this space, this space is very fragmented, and there are a lot of competitors, from small companies of 5+ developers up to companies with 300,000 employees. And the message, the common message that we are getting is we are all offering the same. And now I want to get you back to the selection process. So yes, you decided that you want to start with to work with external partner, but then probably you're bombarded each day, each week of many offers and many contact proposals from companies that are in this space. What is your way how to select them, how to narrow down the selection to maybe top 3, top 5 companies that you would like to partner? What are the key ingredients that you are looking for in the first connection with this type of partnership?
So my perspective of things is, and I've worked with partners which are big. In one company which I worked with, we had a partner in Brazil where we had 150 employees through them. But I also worked with small projects where we had a partner with 2 people on it on our project. In both cases, you want to make sure that there's a career path development for the external consultant, because we're all humans. We want the same things, more or less. I tend to treat my employees and my externals as the same, in the sense they're all part of the same team. We're working for the same goal, regardless of who they're employed with. But from their perspective, that's very important. And somebody needs to care about that human behind the engineer, if you will. So it's very important to have a proper recruitment process where the skills are properly measured. And I tend to, and I think we all do that. I tend to trust the partner which I work with, in the sense I look at their hiring process, I figure out what those engineers have been asked, so I don't duplicate the questions. Of course, in the beginning you'll verify, but once you kind of establish a connection, you will learn to trust that hiring process. And then once they are hired, there's a process of tending to their needs, making sure that their career path progression goes on. And then from a professional perspective, there's also the aspect of, as I mentioned, the continuous training, certification. Like the engineer needs to be, in a way, treated well as well, not just the human. So that's where, in my view, a proper company and a proper partner should be kind of positioned, where allow them to take care of their employees as employees, and then you just work with them on the project at hand.
Yeah, I agree with you. Also, when we consult our partners, we also say that treat the people as your own employees. Give them the task that you will always give the task to you to the same type of employees if they are internal to you, and just treat them as part of the team. And usually, these type of long-term collaborations are very successful because the team also the people in the team want challenge, and they also want to have the challenge according to their seniority level. When we are on the seniority level, how important is for you the first CVs that you receive to match exact or as much as possible to your needs? Is this building trust to you that the partner understood your needs and understood your requirements, and they are coming with pre-selected
Yeah,
CVs, pre-selected people? Yeah.
this is a very good question, though. I think more often than not, the partners, like every relationship is based on under personal or one. And when one of the first meetings when choosing a partner is your needs. the idea is that we focus on explaining our project, explaining our technology client, and we expect to receive profiles of a lot. They just have to be right. So even if it's like 2 or 3 profiles and you're like, it's the starting point, even if you don't end up choosing all 3 of the profiles, unless they match the requirements, you kind of, and this is there's a misunderstanding in the first meeting, so you want to have a second one. So I think it's quite important that the need is acknowledged by the provider, in the sense when you send the first resumes, they need to match as close as possible what the person envisioned. Again, they might all fit and be like those engineers be booked, but it might not be the case. Regardless, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. Even if it's one, it needs to match properly the requirements. That way, you know that between customer and provider, you have an alignment as to what the need is. And afterwards, it's much easier to continue working.
Yeah, I agree with this, and that's one of I believe that the main homework of the providers is to really pre-select and to match. We always do this kind of seniority matching. Also, when we send CVs of a person that is senior, intermediate, junior, then we want to match with the client, because not always the seniority is the same and how you treat people. What is the senior for you and what is the senior
Yeah,
for your client. You mentioned also when it comes to enterprise clients, then the regulation, the regulation is very important, especially if you're in fintech, in health tech. And you mentioned that you would like to have a partner that pass some of the regulation or have some certification that can help you with this. But also you mentioned that when it comes to the single engineers, you also want to have some technical certification that is validating their technical skills. What kind of certification you would appreciate when it comes to the technical certification of individual engineers?
exactly. That's another engineers themselves, but also for the companies. So think about it this way: anything that you can have ahead of time that will shorten the interview process, and I'm talking from the customer's perspective, will help, because you would be able to pick a candidate with the least amount of hassle with your team to pick the right ones. I'll give a very obvious example. We recently had a project that was requiring us to build something on AWS. We didn't have enough staff on the team. What helped us a lot is we got people's resumes, but we also got the certification from AWS as a practitioner, cloud architect. Like the certification for AWS within the AWS tells me that they've passed a bar which I can trust, and that's all I need. I wouldn't go as far as saying any certification is required. Like, you either have the right certification for that specific space, or you go with the resume. You don't just throw any online course. One thing which I would also suggest, like for junior engineers, for beginning of career, because there's a lot of cases where those are being hired as well. I think topics like Udemy and such would actually help for people that have lack of experience professionally. I would even go as far as saying in those cases you would put like projects that they worked on through schooling, etc., because like it gives some level. But going back to certification, when it comes to regulated spaces, primarily the regulation is about either data protection or security. So it's one of these 2 things which is required. AWS certification is and similar. There's, I think, Azure has it all, has the same kind of principle. Google Cloud as well, but these are the big cloud providers. So like that's maybe a specific use case. When it comes to regulated space, primarily it's about data protection or about security. So those 2 would make a huge difference, because you would essentially skip the interview process. There would not be any technical assessment. Rather, you would just spend half an hour to meet the person and see the human and not the engineer. Like in short, the certification would remove the need to verify the engineer. You would only focus on meeting the human.
Yeah. I mean, the AWS is a well-known certification. We know like what is the level, the difficulty to really get the certification. What about soft skills? Have you ever had a situation where you see someone passing some soft skill certification or training and you evaluate those, or those are not important to you?
It is obviously, like, one thing that struck me as odd. I was working with a service provider who did 16 personalities. I'm pretty sure you know the website. So every engineer had, we had their behavioral profile, if you will. Which person has which kind of traits from a character perspective, and this is not a certification of any kind. This is just an assessment you can do online. But it was interesting because, like, until then I didn't realize that would make a difference. And then when we did look at the profiles, then we said, okay, like, these profiles would match what we need and they would fit with our team as well. I don't personally, I've never done any level of certification for the for the personality aspect of things, behavioral. The reason why I'm saying this is the certification is only valid if you can recognize the logo of the certifier. And I'm mentioning AWS only for the perspective of everybody who's listening would know what they do, and you know what this AWS certification means. I can give you another simple example. If you're working on Java, I'm pretty sure that if you have an Oracle certification for certified Java developer, that would bring the same weight as AWS would for this space. Again, it's more about the person seeing the certificate. They need to recognize the weight and to say, okay, that's good. If you don't have that match, if you have to look up the company that they gave the certification, that it doesn't bring much value.
Yeah. And what about many times we also hear from the potential clients that we are in communication that they want to see some review, and
Mhm.
also that they need some referrals from us. So they are asking not only for the current clients
Yeah.
that we are collaborating, they're also asking for to hear someone that we finished collaboration with. So they also want to see how we ended up, what was the professional level that we ended up, what is why we ended up the collaboration. Was it because of quality? Was it because of some other
Yeah.
things? So what is valid for you when you are selecting external partner? What kind of referrals do you
Yeah.
want them to give you some referral directly that you can call, or is it some websites like Clutch and others that are ranking the service providers enough for you?
I mean, reviews are important. Like, I think everybody has reviewed a restaurant before going there. Everybody's reviewed a hotel before going on vacation, or a city before going there for holiday. So, like, we trust other people's opinions, and that relates to business as well. Um, I think websites like Clutch bring weight simply because you can read the full review of a client, right? Depending on the company, some companies require reviews, references rather, from a regulatory perspective. If you're a company that works in the fintech space, and I think it's ISO 27001, which requires you for every partner slash engineer that you hire to have a reference call. It's a requirement. It's a regulatory requirement. So though in those cases, they would specifically ask to speak to a human. In most cases, having having a showcase of your previous customers is relevant. Obviously, if they're like if they're relevant names within my space, so I can recognize a company which I would choose to align with from a value perspective. One thing which can always backfire is that you might not want to see your competitors in that list, but I think that's a use case it's an edge case, sorry, which is always like relevant because we all align with peers in our environment. This is what reviews are. So when you see companies you like in the list of in the list of past customers, you then kind of attribute a little bit of positive feedback to that relationship, even if you didn't spend time to speak to them. But I guess some people would eventually ask, even like, why did you stop collaboration and such?
Yeah, it is very important. I'm with you that the partner that you're working on is not working with your competitors. Otherwise, it might be a problem. There might be some conflict of interest, conflict of knowledge sharing, and so on.
But it
So
might
I
be a
think it
reference as
should
well.
be
It might be a
should
reference as
be
well.
yeah. if it's a complementary in the same industry, for example, if we are working with a complementary company from the same industry, it might be a good reference because then we have built some domain experience. But if you're working with your direct competitor, then it's a question whether it's okay for you or not. In most of the cases, our experience is that the clients are not okay with that because there is some kind of there's always everyone is being afraid to have some internal information leaked to the other party.
You're right, but in
Um,
that case, you would stop the and you would avoid the case you have to go through it. Having like a discussion where they know that you work with a direct competitor. That's a good idea because it in a positive way it's polarizing. It's either super good or super bad. So either companies say, oh, that's a good company that they worked with, which they were service provider to, and it opens the door, or it says, oh, that's a direct competitor. I'm gonna stop here. So it avoids wasting time in a way as well.
yeah. Uh, Yeah, I wanted to ask you about, so there are multiple business models that our companies are operating in. I think you're mostly used to team extension, to classical team extension, where you just get additional people to extend your team. But we have also uh, custom solution development, where the whole solution is being developed, and there are new models now evolving. How the market is changing, more output oriented type of agreements and so on. But I will speak more about the team extension with you. Do you have any experience, or let's say, let's ask the question on this way, like, what is the best, I would say, the best practices for a long-term collaboration with a single partner? You mentioned here that people development, you mentioned here taking care for the people care is also important for you. But is there anything that you would like to highlight as the most important thing once you start collaborating and you want this to last long? What will be the main best practices in this topic?
Sorry, the connection broke for the last second. I'll try to assume the last part of the question, but um, long-term collaborations usually work best when there's no barrier between groups. So in short-term projects, when I've chosen partners, I've tried to do complete isolation between teams, which means we spec out a feature or a part of the feature which is an externalizable project, and then we hand it over to an external team, which can be in the service provider, and that team handles from end to end and provides a package, a deliverable. This is really works well when you have short time, limited scope, packageable item, right? Not everything works this way. If it's a multi-year collaboration, in that case, the best way to go forward is to actually mix teams and integrate, which allows the company, which is in your case the client, to share the knowledge between employees, internal and external, and it allows the um, service provider engineers to fuse with the team. So, like when they say my team, they mean the team which is in service provider and in customer. They really think about the team that's building the product. This is where you get the best ratio of things because you would, which is the idea, right? To fuse the teams. So, best collaboration moving in a long term let's say relationship between the two companies is to build teams which are mixed and matched. Usually isolated teams are not best, meaning a team of internal employees and a team of external employees speak to each other or work on different projects. It's not ideal because this fusion of internal external would be kind of missed. It doesn't necessarily mean it can be bad. It's just like from a perspective of the humans, they would say that team's external, so we don't know how things are going, etc. Rather, the idea is to have a case where there's a full alignment between the employees, and for that you need to have a fusing of them, if you will.
Yeah, and when you are speaking about fusion of the teams, we spoke a lot in the past that cultural fit is also important as a technical fit,
Yeah.
and we spoke a little bit about soft skills. Um, and what is the cultural fit for you? How would you define the cultural fit and how important this is compared to the technical fit. We spoke a lot about technical fit. It's important to get certification, knowledge, and everything. What about the cultural fit? I believe we lost you now for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you repeat the last part of the question? How important is the cultural versus
Yeah, so we spoke a lot that the technical fit is super important, even from the first moment when you receive the CVs of the people. But also we spoke in the past a lot with you that cultural fit is super important for the team to work together on a long-term uh, project. So can you tell us a little bit more about the cultural fit and how you define the cultural fit and how you check whether there is a cultural fit and between the teams and between the external people?
so culture is what prevents professionals from working time or enabling them. It's a polarizing subject. Um, behavioral, let's say, fit as well. You want to make sure that, and this is why you need to meet the engineers before hiring them. If you have I'll go with the simple and most basic of examples, which is if you have introverts in the team and you put a dominant extrovert in that team, regardless of where they came from, that might either be really, really well because that person might be the lead of the group, or it might backfire because it would be a person who's too disruptive. So this is one basic aspect. Then you have other aspects, which is um, we as humans measure a person's standing intelligence capacity based on how they express themselves, how we perceive. If you have a language barrier where the person speaks with, and again, it can be both ways. Like this, I've seen this happen on the customer side, which was on my side, where one of my engineers didn't speak the level of English that was required for the team, so that everybody else gets the idea. So they would speak in French, then another person in the team would translate, and then everybody else would align on the subject because the language of that team was English; it was not French. So there's many aspects of things that you measure, and I think it's very important that people align on the communication level. How often do you communicate, and with which words, if you will, you communicate to convey an idea. Once that's done, then comes the behavioral fit. I think nowadays, with professional level working, with the professionalism that people have, it should be um, it shouldn't be a problem. But all in all, I think we have cases where that can be a barrier. I think companies which are on the European soil are quite adaptable, I'd say. And I've seen them work well with other setups where we expand, let's say, within Europe, the European soil, or within, let's say, part of the Western Hemisphere. Um, so I think it is an important part of the puzzle for sure.
Yeah, many times we measure this in the communication skills. As you mentioned, you can always have people that want to communicate less or more, introvert, extrovert, name it. But also, we are measuring it on how they received and give feedback when things are going well, and especially when things are not going well. I think we lost you again for a second. We'll wait for a second for Tancha. Maybe I will just continue on what Tancha was saying about and just give some my experience on this based on multi-client collaboration. So the cultural fit is not only communicational skills, but also how the team members are receiving feedback, how they are giving the feedback. Are they open for a direct feedback and instant feedback when there's a problem? But also, are they raising the hand when they see some kind of problem and they're feeling secure enough and confident enough to raise the hand and to say to speak their words. So Tancha, just continue speaking while you were offline
Yeah,
about
gods
yeah
of
about
today.
yeah. And we received one question and while we were waiting for you to come back. Now it's much better, the picture. I don't know what was the issue with, but now we can see you clearly. So welcome back, Tansha. So I just said that regarding the cultural fit is not only the communication skills are very important. And besides communication skills, we also evaluate feedback skills and also the skills of raising the hand when you see some problem. Because we have seen, especially in the development world, in the tech teams,
Yeah,
there are people that are not feeling confident and comfortable enough to raise the hand when they see a potential error, when they see potential flaw in the architecture, or even in the specification of the tickets, even in the designs that are coming to them. But they say, okay, let's do it. And then when the problem rises too late, or
yeah,
we could really prevent it. So this
yeah,
is also part of the cultural fit that we evaluate on people, and we try to fit with the culture. For example, in Germany, it is expected kind of to speak more directly and more frequently, and to receive a feedback very fast, to not, and also to give a feedback when you see when you see any problem or any good situation. So this is important. Maybe just we'll go through the question. So, how do you nearshore teams accelerate product delivery and shorten time to market for SaaS companies? Yeah. So, if you
um,
want, I
yeah,
can.
of course.
Yeah.
I'll jump in. Hopefully, my connection stays stable. Um, and I apologize for the network interruption we had a minute ago. But in any case, I mean, in companies which are SaaS, you have the ability to deploy once and ship to everyone. The more man hours you put in a feature, the more features you can develop, the more features you can ship. Um, Time to market it doesn't necessarily mean that if you add nearshoring, it would necessarily accelerate. I would put it in a different scope, in a sense. If you put more human hours on your product, it should, if you manage it well, either improve time to market or increase the amount of features which you ship within a period of time. The ability where nearshoring helps is you avoid the hassle of hiring to grow the teams, and you can grow immediately. I think for me this is the biggest benefit of service providers, where I reach out, I request 10 people, and usually within a period of a few weeks, a month, I have 10 people. Again, numbers are irrelevant directly, but it takes me more to hire people in the team. Sometimes nearshoring is used as a buffer as well, to say I need to grow my team by 30 people within the next 12 months. You get people which are from a service provider now, and then you gradually grow your teams, and then by the time you've grown, you actually kind of hit the next expansion. So both groups continue. But at the end of the day, time to market should be shortened in theory. Why? Because you want to ship a full functionality which is comprised of multiple features. So you can immediately get more people in your teams. Those people, once onboarded, will produce value. And then again, mostly it depends on the client, on the company, as to how you manage them. If you
Yeah.
manage well, like you get what you put in a way.
Yeah. I will also add here, one thing is how fast you can ramp up, but many cases also nearshoring services are used to ramp down as well, to be flexible in ramping down, because we know that some of the regulations in the European Union are not that friendly when it comes to the cutting down the number of employees after some period of time when the project is finished. It's also used for that, unfortunately, but it's also some kind of flexibility that is used by the clients. But I will go back to the question. I think, and I'm with you here, that regardless of it's an internal or external team member, acceleration of the product delivery and shortening the time to market means also when you work on a long term with the same people, you build domain knowledge. They build the knowledge around the code base, around the knowledge of CI/CD pipeline, and then they can easily deploy teams with much more confidence. So it's very important that the people that you have on the team are not rotating very often, so that you're building not only domain but also code knowledge and also team knowledge. So the communication is easier, they understand easier between them. So this is also important that you have a long-term collaboration with the same people within the project, where this is accelerating the time to market or time to production, let's say, of new features.
So there's one more thing which we haven't touched, and I think it's a very relevant point, especially in the startup world. Um, in turbulent times, there's turbulent events, and I had a case where my domain knowledge in a specific area of the product we were developing was actually held by externals because my internal teams were going through a rough patch. We had to downsize the employees for whichever reason, and we also had a set of departures. So at one point, I found myself in a case where internals were leaving the team to the point where the whole domain knowledge was owned by the external team. Now, from the perspective of engineering, that makes no difference.
That sounds scary for most of the
It does.
companies.
But on the other hand, that helped me because I could hire new engineers that were onboarded by the service provider. But the perception was not the service provider per se. The idea was these are members of the team that have continued working. And while that's a scary moment, it's better to have it than to not, because that's where the external partner, the company, stands into play, because you can raise that risk saying your employees are now critical to my company's success, and I need to make sure that these people stay on board fully happy, whatever. And then the company does what it needs to do. You can negotiate whatever needs to be negotiated with them if that's an issue. But the important thing is you have a level of certainty, because as those people are, this is usually coming in bad events, like a round of funding didn't happen, some contract was not signed, people get aroused by the fact that we were working for 6 months on this bank and you haven't still signed it yet, you said you would do it by now, like these kinds of tensions which are internal. While it's not pleasant, it's actually good to know that that's something to be able to have, which is you're able to lean on a partner, and that's not easy to get in
So
today's world.
speaking of which, one of the things that we are being evaluated most of the time is the turnover rate of people, and
Hmm.
question that always comes in the early stage of communication with potential partners. They're
Hmm.
asking what is the turnover rate, and I'm always saying two numbers. One is the turnover rate overall of the company, because then you have also employees from non-tech departments, and this is maybe relevant but not so much. It gives some picture about the company, about the culture of the company, but more relevant is what is the turnover rate of the people that are within the projects,
Hmm.
because we have also people that are not on the projects, they are waiting for a project. Usually they are in uncertain area. Most of the time they decide to change company, but there are people that are on the project, and this is very important for us to be less than 5%. And we as a company are really striving to get this below 3% on a long-term basis. So this is very important. So I guess this is also important for you. Now I use the time to to brag a little bit, but I guess this is also important for you.
Yeah. I mean, in the engineering space, turnover rates are generally a problem for everyone. People leave and decide to leave generally for two things. um, when there's a lot of opportunities on the market, you want to look at them at one point, and nobody really changes positions for the sake of changing. They usually change positions because something's wrong. So either the project that they're working on, they might not like the team or the product, or it's a salary problem. And it kind of, I think for me, one of the more important metrics would be, let's say, a regular space within which people stay in a company is about 3 years. If it's less than a year, it's an alarm. If it's more than 3 years, then like it's a super stable company. I think the golden metric is about, if it's between 2.5 and 3, then you're in a good space. But that's my perception. Again, it depends. If you're talking to somebody like I don't know, IBM, where they have people that have worked there for 35 years, then that's probably a different metric, right? Um, it is relevant because you choosing a partner providing you with engineers, you want to make sure that those engineers stay there. If you have a complicated project, then you have an onboarding process that might take up to 6 months. People will contribute, but they will not fully be on board. And if the average time in the company is 2.5 years, they spent a year and a half before joining you. They still spend 6 months onboarding. That means you have about 6 more months for them to contribute, and then you have to look for another. So it is relevant. It's not negligible, but you also, as the client, you have a big part in that. And I can tell you from experience where I had external engineers which were not part of my company, but they switched them from team A to team B because they showed a lot of interest into that technology. And I know that by suffocating them with whatever project is about to die, that I'm just letting them maintain it, I'll lose them, because at the end of the day, they're humans. They wake up same as I do. They brush their teeth same as I do. But the difference is their feet are walking backwards because they don't like the work they're doing, and they'll leave. And I am to blame to a certain extent for that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always saying there is challenge and money. You can increase the challenge. Maybe you can create a little bit interest with increasing the challenge. But if you don't balance the money and challenge, they will leave. If you increase the money but the challenge is down, that means they're losing their market value because they're working on boring stuff or old technology. So that means they will leave because they are seeing that they're losing their value in the market, and the vice versa. If
Mm,
you also increase the challenge, but the money are not following, and there's a big gap between the challenge. And they
exactly.
will leave because they're also understanding that they're contributing a lot, but they're not paid fair enough. So they will leave as well. So it's always this balance of challenge and money. Um,
When there's
so
opportunity in the market, it's easy to switch, and it's very important to make sure that what you're letting people work on is something that they perceive as fulfilling. If you don't have that, like we can shove coal in an engine. It's whatever money anybody pays me, I'm not going to do it.
then sure, we have 5 more minutes.
Yeah.
And with you, it's always easy to get to speak like for hours, and it's always interesting. Maybe before wrapping up, just a question to our audience. If there are some questions, feel free to write them down. We can read them here on this platform. If not, we will just go with wrapping up. So you mentioned multiple things and why we are doing this, just maybe just to give a brief overview. So the market is changed. We know this for the service industry, especially. It's changed, so the demand is dropped significantly for the last 2 years. So the buying cycle increased significantly. And also the buying process, we see a shift in the buying process of our clients. So this is one way for us to understand the thought process of our buyers. And we decided to open up this knowledge to everyone that is following us on LinkedIn and everyone that will be part of this webinar. And I know that we will continue this also with other partners and other potential partners. So just wanted to give this kind of information out. And just to wrap up, so maybe you can try to wrap up like in few sentences, what is the most important on the whole flow from the first decision to start working and then to the end, maybe just highlight if you want, or if not, I can help you.
Um, when deciding whether to go with nearshore companies, I guess the first thing that's being perceived by the company is the risk that they take on. And usually it's the first time you're doing it,
Sorry, I will interrupt you. Isn't the same risk as hiring internal people? And
no, it is the thing is, you're exposing yourself to something that will consume time, and it's actually less risk than hiring, in the sense, because when you hire in most countries, there's a trial period, if you will. Once you pass it, getting those people out of the company is much more difficult. This is not the case with service providers, but there's a perception of risk, um, especially because you're allowing people to work on your product. I think once you've done it once, then it kind of becomes a second nature, and you see the benefits of having those kinds of partnerships. It's relevant to be able to screen through multiple providers and to find the right partner. Not every person or every company works the same way, so sometimes the provider is right for one but not for the other. You need to choose yours. In that process of choosing, you need to make sure that there's a company to company fit. The management levels are able to clearly communicate with each other, set expectations, and meet expectations. You need to look at the technicalities of that partnership, meaning any level of certification that's required, any security mechanisms that need to be put in place. Once that's done and you have a basis, my suggestion for everybody who's kind of on the edge, should we or shouldn't we, go with one or two people and see how it goes. Not every relationship is the same, and not every mechanism is the same. Go with one or two people and try it out. If it works, then you know it works, you've learned, and then you can actually expand or decrease. It's a choice that companies make. There's a lot of benefits. There's also a cost. You need to discover yours, but it's a very common way that companies grow.
Good. So I would like to thank you a lot
Thank you.
for it was a pleasure talking to you. Thanks to the audience for being with us today. I guess this will be recorded. It will be live. I mean, it will be also after that accessible to on LinkedIn. And Sancho, I will for sure call you for other topics. I mean, there's a lot of topics that we would like to discuss, especially when it comes to deep tech and solutions and going through different solutions. I know this is something that you can speak forever. Yeah, and for sure I will call you again that we speak some of the deep topics. So thank
Thank you
you
again,
all. Yeah,
and
thank
have
you
a
all
nice day, everyone.
and have a great rest of the day. See you. Bye.